Hey everybody, it's Chase with AV Pop Culture again, and today we are here because I finally did it. I saw The Substance, and I have a lot of thoughts as both a fan of movies my whole life and a filmmaker for the past 20 years or so. And I just had one big question going through my mind the whole time that I'm going to answer here today, and that is it all style and no substance? So pop that tape in. I got you. Let's go do this. This one's gonna get interesting. All right, so The Substance, and we're gonna dig into this a little bit. I'm gonna do a quick overview. Most people have probably seen it by now that are going to watch it. Maybe some of you are waiting on the physical media release. So I'm just going to warn you, there are spoilers in this. It's probably not going to be overly spoiler heavy. It's not going to be a lot more than you could glean from what you can read online or the trailer. But I finally watched the movie because I was trying to decide if I wanted to buy it on physical media. And that is a thing, sometimes I try before I buy. I am not 100% sold on blind buying everything. And a lot of times, to be honest, when something hits the hype train, that makes me press pause a whole lot quicker and say, maybe I'm going to try this before I buy it, because people get caught up in the hype train. I do a whole video series on that, like movies that are not as good as everybody says, or maybe they're not, maybe they're just caught up in the hype train. And I do think there's some of that with this movie. If you are expecting me to say, I hate this movie, you're come to the wrong place. If you expect me to say, should win the Oscar, it's the greatest movie ever, it's groundbreaking, you're not going to find that here either. So we are in for a film discussion. And so just a quick overview. Let me fix my microphone here. Just a quick overview. The movie stars Demi Moore, and she is an aging actress. She has her star on the Walk of Fame, and she's over 50 now, and she is worried about her age, her beauty fading, all that kind of stuff. It is a classic story that, though it is portrayed as unique to women, that's not actually the case. So that's not just true for actresses, but we'll get to that in a minute, because there's some interesting context and commentary there. But it stars Demi Moore, and the film is directed by, I'm going to try to get this name right because you guys know I stink with names, Coralie Farja. That's my best French. She directs it. This is only her second film, and we'll get back to that in just a minute as well. But she directs it, and Demi Moore turns in a hell of a performance in this. She absolutely does. Do I think it's her best performance? I don't actually think so. But I think the movie hinges 100% on Demi Moore and old school practical effects. I think it does 100%. And I mean, it has some great practical effects, and I love seeing practical effects come back. But she is an aging actress. She's losing her job. She's losing everything. She feels like she doesn't exist anymore. And they kind of push that in a hyper-realized kind of state of things, which makes sense because Coralie, the director, her big influences as I was researching her are Cronenberg, Verhoeven, John Carpenter, and I'm like, hey, like those are three of her favorite directors. I love those three directors too, so I'm like definitely digging that vibe, like where she's coming from on that. And then she's talking about how she loved revenge films that inspired her, things like Rambo. She pulls out Rambo, and I'm like, hey, I like this. But then I feel like the movie has this great premise here that's something, it not groundbreaking at all. I keep hearing the word groundbreaking. The concept of this movie is not groundbreaking at all. In fact, it's done a lot where the aging actress or actor is desperate to hold on to their stardom, their youth, their beauty. Look, I even put it into my film, Bring Me a Dream, where one of the lead actresses in that movie, she used to be a beauty queen. She founded a sorority back in her day and all of that. And when they get confronted with their worst nightmares, her worst nightmare is losing her beauty and her youth. So by no means is this a groundbreaking concept. I keep hearing that and I'm like, no, it is not. It is actually a classic sort of story. And in that, though, it does take it to a next level because Demi Moore's character goes and get this black market substance, the substance that will help give her her youth and beauty back, so she thinks. But there are a lot of caveats to this that create just huge, gaping chest wounds of plot holes. Like just massive plot holes in this movie, and nobody's talking about these plot holes. Maybe I see it because I'm a writer and I've taught creative writing and all that kind of stuff, but man, is there some plot holes that you just kind of try to overlook because there's so much style thrown at you. There is so much filmmaking style. It's like getting hit with rights and lefts of like music video stylized montages in the movie. I felt like I had a little bit of a headache by the end of the movie because there is the most like the filmmaking takes a forefront. And so that's where it becomes a little bit of style over substance. And I think there is a better movie story that is overshadowed by all of the style in the film. Something that could have been even more poignant. And it's sacrificed in order to ride the wave of style and ride the wave of like what's popular and almost like here on YouTube where you try to see, people see what's popular and they post similar videos to try to ride the algorithm and get noticed. There is a degree of that feels like it exists with this movie to me. And Demi Moore goes and gets that. We're going to get into all that. She goes and gets the substance. She has all these rules she must follow. She trades 7 days of herself with 7 days of her younger self. Here's where the big plot hole happens. The Demi Moore's character and then Margot Qualley's character, or Marguerite Qualley, they are not conscious of what is happening to the other during their 7 days off. So they're not experiencing that. So here is the massive hole in the plot no one's talking about. And that is if Demi Moore does this, her character does this in order to get her youth and beauty and re-experience that part of life again and the stardom and all of that. She got screwed because she doesn't experience any of that. So why would you want it? Where is the benefit to Demi Moore's character and her consciousness and her life? There is no benefit. You are benefiting another entity created off of you, and you are not experiencing or remembering or enjoying any of the benefits of being young and beautiful again. You're asleep while she's awake, and it makes no sense. Like you're doing this. If she transformed herself into getting young again, and then she just changed back, but she was living it each time as an old person, young person, older person, younger person, it would make sense. But it keeps telling you they're the same, that you are one and the same, but that's only on like a molecular level. Their consciousness, their memories, their actions, their experiences do not transfer over to one another. And they make that abundantly clear as they keep digging at one another while they're asleep. Demi Moore's character just gets disillusioned, and she's sitting around eating all of this food and just, she's scarred up. She gets no benefits whatsoever from this. And I don't know how people miss this. Like this script like gets all this acclaim. It has a hole in the plot this big. Like I don't know how that's not seen. Like, and it's very hard for me from a filmmaker and a writer standpoint and someone who taught writing in film studies to just overlook. Because my first question would be, well, why did she do it if she's getting none of the benefit from it? You need to explain what her benefit is, because there isn't any. And if there purposely isn't any, and she just got the wool pulled over her eyes, you need to explain that too. She needs to have a problem with that in the movie, and it like is not addressed. It's not addressed, except for she meets someone else who uses the substance, and the guy is like, "Have they started eating off of your time yet?" And then there was another that created another plot hole as the other version of herself, the younger version of herself, starts to exceed her 7-day time. It starts to cause a decay and erosion of Demi Moore's character because she's pinching off of her to gain more time. So my first thought was, when Demi Moore decides she's going to kill the younger version of herself and give her the other liquid that will terminate her, why didn't she just start living more off of her time? And instead of 7 days, pull it back the other way to regenerate herself. It needed to be explained why you could or couldn't do that. Again, because if one can do it, why can't the other do it? Because he actually, the ghost guy she talks to on the phone explains that, tells her that that's possible to do, and then she doesn't do it. Like, I would immediately be like pulling back to regenerate myself. And if for some reason she can't do it and it can't go that way, that also needs to be explained. So giant plot holes here that were overlooked in favor of going for style. Now, the director herself said she purposely is going for jar cinema, like to jar you with these shots. One of the things I disliked about the movie a lot was the overly unnecessary and jarring close-ups, like super close-ups on the mouth that are just done for gross out purposes. That's it. And then if you have to go into, like the director did, read me a thesis paper on why that it's supposed to symbolize Hollywood chewing up women and spitting them out and the predatory nature of men. Well, you don't just use those close-ups on Dennis Quaid's character, who's great. He's fantastic in this, over the top, hamming it up. But that kind of goes back to riding the clickbait wave. We had to go into the all men are bad storyline. And that's an instant turn off for me. Like, it's just, and of course I'm going to, in case you don't know this, I'm not a woman. So I can't speak from a woman's perspective, but I do think that sort of storyline is tired. Like, all men are evil predators is a tired storyline. And, so I immediately go and I'm like, I wonder what some of the critics' perspectives on this is. And I go over to Rotten Tomatoes and I'm looking, and I'm just wondering if they're kind of all over the place. And as you can see, there's no shortage of critic thoughts on this. But there were a few that caught my attention. Someone said it's one of the best body horrors we've gotten in a hot minute. It probably is, there's not a ton of body horror that comes out all the time. This I also agree with. The train wreck of the ending of The Substance doesn't take away from it being one film that will stick in my head. It definitely will stick in your head. The ending is absolutely a train wreck. Another script problem. The ending is a train wreck. It's like they didn't know how to end it, and it just kept going too far, too messed up. Again, for shock value, the ending is an absolute train wreck. This one too, I totally agree with this. It's an overly long runtime. I usually don't have a problem with runtimes, but when things are so hyper stylized, that wears thin over time. And this reviewer here said, Farjah's bold, brash, and angry sophomore feature, simultaneously funny and nauseating. I agree with that. But the one I agree with more is from Gone with the Twins. This guy here, this critic, he says, despite the overlong runtime, the end result is potent, but largely thanks to superb special makeup effects and Moore's acting. That's what I said at the beginning. To me, that's what the movie hinges on. Without that, it doesn't make it. It doesn't make it. This one too. She said the film feels fresh in a garish sort of way. She said maybe because the boundary breaking horrors. Again, maybe this critic's just not a horror fan. There's not a lot of things. I mean, watch From Beyond or The Thing. You're going to get some of this stuff. Watch Cronenberg. You're going to get some of this stuff. So it's not breaking new boundaries. It's doing odes to those in a very good way. But I agree. Eventually, however, the special effects go spectacularly over the top and not in a good way. Again, that's probably directed at the ending. That's just way, way, way too much. Arty farty provocation. Yeah. Probably so. This is a very good review here. It's a film that operates under the guise of a feminist film that has something profound to say. This ambitious, grotesque, and undeniably provocative film is maddeningly smug and indulgent in a way that leads to self-sabotage. That was written by a female critic. She's 100% right, because a lot of the foundations that the premise is built upon, like the men are bad and Hollywood is chewing up just women and spitting them out, and it's all just that, is very self-indulgent, and it's not entirely accurate, because while I can't speak for women, I can speak as a director that's cast people and as a man, and there are some unrealistic chew you up and spit you out things going on when it comes to men and male bodies and how male actors have to look. The superhero genre, like, there used to be just a handful of guys, Rocky, Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jean-Claude Van Damme, just a few guys that were above and beyond. They were the muscled movie stars and all of that stuff that were larger than life. Now every man almost has to become a Greek god in order to portray anything on film at this point. And that is a fact. Like, that's happening everywhere. There's even David Harbour talks about how he was told he was too fat to play the Blob in a movie. Chris Pratt was told flat out he was too fat and slovenly to play Star-Lord. All of these things, all these men, like, talking about how they weren't big enough, they weren't this, they weren't that, and were thrown away casting and had to go and do this to their body and come back. If that shoe was on the other foot, it would cause a big, big, big issue. And nowadays, so like some of the stuff that the plot hinges on has really already shifted away from that in a certain respect. Now, there's always going to be people that are predators, that are jerks, whatever. But it is it's kind of like standing on a house of cards. And in some of these critics, like that one, who is a female critic writer, picked up on that right away. And this too, an intriguing premise, 100% intriguing. I think there's a greater movie in it somewhere. An intriguing premise with strong acting. However, subtlety and nuance is thrown out the window in favor of shock value punishment, leading to repetitive themes and obnoxious body horror hammering the same point with diminishing returns. A bit too self-indulgent. I found that word, that sentiment through tons of critic and reviews is self-indulgent. And I definitely get that when I'm watching the movie. I mean, the way I was trained with filmmaking is you don't put anything, you don't shoot. And listen, all rules are made to be broken when it comes to filmmaking. Filmmaking is art. But there is nothing, you have to ask yourself, like the scene where Dennis Quaid is eating and he's having that conversation with her where he's basically telling her you're fired. Is there anything in that scene that cannot be conveyed without the shock value of going up tight on his face and having nastiness in his teeth, like rotted teeth, and eating with his mouth open and stuff? Is there anything in that scene that can't be told the same without that? If the answer is yes, then it shouldn't be there. There's like an old thing, and I forget the exact thing that it's called, but it's like the gun on the wall paradox. You never, when you're filming a movie, show a gun on the wall unless it plays a part. Like you don't do a tight shot of a gun hanging on the wall and then never use that gun in the movie. So because otherwise it doesn't need to be there. In my opinion, it was like, okay, those are the moments where you traded the story and you overshadowed what was happening to Demi Moore in that scene, like the heartbreaking bullcrap that was happening to her. You trade that for shock value in the moment, and it overshadows your point in order of the story, in order to have gross out shock value. That kind of happens too much for me in the movie. And so there's definitely stuff like that. But then you pick up on like this, and here we go. This critic from NPR. When did NPR start having movie critics? She writes, this movie falls into the category of films that men like to claim as feminist. Men like to claim, again, we have men are bad here. The director is a woman who said this. She said that is basically a feminist take because she says that women over a certain age, including her, are discarded by Hollywood and society and not represented in movies. And my jaw hit the floor. First of all, she's making the point that this, she's saying that it's a feminist type film with these undertones, and you have critics out here still blaming men and male critics for calling it feminist. The director's basically saying it's that. But then what dropped my jaw on this behind the scenes thing, and hopefully I can put it in here.
There are no representations anymore of women over 50, in movies that disappear.
Is the director saying that Hollywood just discards women over the age of 50, and just like herself, she felt like she's disappearing, like Demi Moore, these women have no place? And I thought, wait a minute, what? Because if you go and you really think about this, there's whole articles like this, actresses over 50 who still rule Hollywood. This list is about to be very long, and I'm not going to go over it all. Nicole Kidman, Helen Bonham Carter, Robin Wright, Halle Berry, Selma Hayek, Viola Davis, Sarah Jessica Parker, Diane Lane, Vivica A. Fox, Marissa Tomei, Courtney Cox, Mary Louise Parker, Sandra Bullock, Laura Linney, Mariska Hargitay, Lisa Kudrow, Helen Hunt, Vanessa Williams, Demi Moore, Jodie Foster, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Jane Lynch, Julianne Moore, Emma Thompson, Jamie Lee Curtis still doing leading roles in movies, Angela Bassett, Michelle Pfeiffer, Sharon Stone, Holly Hunter, Joan Allen, Gina Davis, Renee Russo, Oprah, Kim Basinger, Meryl Streep, Jane Seymour, Sigourney Weaver, Jennifer Aniston, all on and on, Helen Mirren in movies all the time. So I could go on and on and on. Susan Sarandon, Sissy Spacek. So is my point to that is it based on a false premise? Because all of those people that I just read you, the director says Hollywood has forgot about them. They're not represented. They're not in any movies. And so that inspired her to make this movie. to me, that feels like we're on a false premise, but it's a very clickbaity type premise to click and ride the wave a little bit. And what is funnier still to me, as somebody who's been trying to struggle to make independent films for 20 or so years, teaching film, doing all this stuff, going around the country to film festivals, going and speaking at things like Days of the Dead, like horror conventions on indie filmmaking and stuff like that, earning every dollar, trying to scrape for money. This is only her second film. And she was given on her first film, she had done a couple of short films, that was it. She studied at a very prestigious and extremely expensive film school in Paris. Before that, she studied at a political science school that was even more expensive. I'm talking like 20 to 30,000 US dollars per term. So we're talking very expensive schools. She studied at these very prestigious schools and made a couple of short films. In her very first filmmaking adventure, she got like $7 million budget. It was either 5.7 or 7.5. I looked it up. I can't remember. For Revenge. Now that one I haven't seen, but that is a massive budget to be like, you guys have no idea. When there's SAG ultra low budget, Screen Actors Guild ultra low budget is like under $150,000 for a budget for a movie. Low budget is like 1.2 million and under. So she is well above low budget on her very first film. She's got millions of dollars. And then her second film, she gets Universal Studios, because she worked with Working Title Productions. She gets Universal Studios to fund this thing at like $18 million, and she gets Demi Moore to star in her second film, Dennis Quaid in her second film. She is living a lightning bolt shot of a dream that most independent filmmakers, male or female, can only imagine in their fever dreams. So she has not had that kind of where she had to go and make a film for $20,000 and earn a way into the film festival. So maybe the next one she could get $30,000 and proof of concept to make more movies, to where now you've earned it to where an agent will even show a D-list actor your script and earn it every step of the way up. She came right out of the gate hot. Millions of dollars to make her first, studio millions on her second, Demi Moore as a lead, and had Final Cut, which she refused to change for the studio, and Universal Studios sold it to Mubi, I think MUBI Studios, and they've made like $80 million on it. So the perceived, like, I'm not a woman. I haven't lived her whole life, but like from a filmmaking standpoint, she started out where only people can dream of. So to act like it was, this thing that had so many doors closed in your face that spawned the script and the movie is somewhat off-putting. But then there's other things I absolutely love. I love her commitment to just getting her hands in there and working on it and helping apply makeup and running the camera and editing it and saying, piss off, I am not changing my movie. Man, I respect that so much. Now, it's easier to do when you've made a lot of money and you have, a movie with Demi Moore. It's a little harder to do. Now, I've done it with Dark Roads. I wouldn't agree to do certain things. I walked away from money and stuff like that. And I still haven't put the film out. So, I respect that so much. I love somebody that's committed to bringing back practical effects, all that kind of stuff. But the whole men are bad thing, and it is tired on me as a storyline. Because like, if you look, this isn't a new thing with men. Like going back, Sean Connery was told that he was an overgrown stunt man, and he had to change things to get the role of 007. Christopher Reeve was told he was too skinny to play Superman. Jean-Claude Van Damme and all those guys, they had to work out. There was no padding of muscles at that time. You have Arnold famously having, getting where he was because of his charisma and his body. But here's something you didn't know about Arnold. His first big movie, Stay Hungry, with Bob Rafelson, where he starred across from Jeff Bridges and Sally Field. He was told he was too big and muscle bound by Bob Rafelson, and he had to go from 245 pounds to 209, and Bob Rafelson told him he was going to weigh him the day before filming started, and if he did not weigh 209, the contract was pulled. He was out, and at that point he'd be 209, and that he wouldn't be able to jump right back to bodybuilding, and that was his income. So he had to do that. So if you haven't seen Stay Hungry, you should check it out. Sylvester Stallone, famously for Rocky III, got his body fat down so low that he nearly had to be put in the hospital because he couldn't even remember people's phone numbers. He couldn't remember his name sometimes. His brain fog was so heavy. He was living off a can of tuna and a couple of boiled eggs and water and black coffee for months. And he couldn't even function. So these are things that when you look, all of these guys have had to go through this too. It's not like it is something that is unique. So I feel like to portray it that way is kind of getting old and tired. And it was so pounded over the head again and again and again in the movie, and it just doesn't make sense. But now I will say, in defense of her and in defense of this attitude towards women, in my movie Bring Me a Dream, you're going to see some scathing info here. So in my film Bring Me a Dream, if you go to my IMDb and you go to the movie, oops, I think I'm on the wrong one. All right, here's my movie. This is Bring Me a Dream. This is the one that starred Martin Cove and Tyler Mane. If you go down to the user comments, there's somebody that gave it a 6 out of 10. That's nice. But here we go. This one kind of sums up where she's right about people's attitudes. They made this look like a good movie, but it's not. Here's the thing, though. Here's where the attitude towards women, people have this attitude that's crappy, but it's towards everybody in general. They really think these women look like they're in college? Really? Come on. They look like they're all 30 plus. Come on. And bad acting on top of it. They all look like they're 30 plus. Like, damn these women for being over 30. First of all, these women weren't, except for the two actresses in the movie who were supposed to be over 30, who that's part of their story, and they weren't supposed to be in college. The other actresses in the film were all of college age. They were in that 18 to 23-ish window. So that is somebody attacking the movie because of the looks of the women. And so in that regard, she's totally right. She's totally right. People are still jerks that do that. But I don't think it is as widespread, particularly in Hollywood anymore, as it used to be. Because number one, it can't be. You can't even have a film anymore be considered for an Oscar unless it meets a certain number of requirements for women, for different minorities, different ethnicities, different orientations, all of that stuff. You can't, and that actually has nothing to do with whether a film is good or not. So I think we've moved past that, but it really does work for clicks. It works for attention. And so you get the people who want that, and then you get people who want body horror as well. And I think that is, she kind of hit the wave of double clickbait, kind of. But that said, I think that she buried the lead under style. And I think that if she had focused more on the story, fixed those big plot holes, I would have liked it even more. And you look, everybody can like different stuff. I'm not telling you not to like the film. I like the film. I don't like it enough to own it. So it's not one that I will pick up. But I think Demi Moore's performance is great. I honestly think Demi Moore has turned in better performances, but man, she went for it on this. And I give her so much credit for putting it out there like that. Because that was brave as hell. It was brave as hell. And I give Coralie just massive buckets of credit for getting in there, even with a big budget. She got in there indie style, like determined to do practical effects, determined to do all that stuff. And I love that. I love that heart in there. I love the fact that even getting that budget. Now, she doesn't know any different. Because she's always had bigger budgets for her two films than most indie filmmakers do. But man, to get in there and get hands on, I want to see more films from her. I want to see more people like that making films. If Hollywood would give indie filmmakers out there, especially like horror filmmakers who've had to figure it out and make $1 look like $5,000 on camera, I think we would get a lot more movies that are good. And I really do. And that's not just me saying, because I would like that for myself. I'll figure it out. But just in general, grab those people who've had to be creative and love film and put it out there, and let's not get to a point where for those indie filmmakers to get to that point, everything has to be heavy-handed with the story, where it is, certain like clickbait based or hot topic based or whatever. Let's just tell good stories. Find people who figured out how to tell good stories and make good films without mega budgets. And I think even though she's had big budgets and she hasn't really had to climb the ladder in that way from making $5,000 films, she's in there with that same spirit, and I support that 100%. And the movie for me is a 5 out of 10, because I think there's a great movie, a great story, and maybe an even scarier horror in there. But man, it has big plot holes, big ones, and it sacrifices story and substance for style. And that's what I got for you. Check it out if you haven't seen it, and let me know your thoughts. I'm sure I'll probably be in the minority on this because I look at it from a completely different way. But that's what I got for you today. We do all kinds of things here. Movie reviews, 4K reviews, lists, rankings, physical media news, all that stuff from a fan and filmmaker's perspective. If that is your jam, please help support the channel by liking and subscribing below. If you want to help support the channel even more, you can become a channel member, get behind the scenes looks at my filmmaking so you can tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. You can get special members only videos, all kinds of stuff. And of course, you're going to get your name in lights here on every single video, and it really does support the channel. And until next time, be kind, rewind like always. This is Chase with AV Pop Culture, and I'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.
I know.